Ready to clear out some clutter? Donate your new and gently used items to the Habitat for Humanity Portland Region Restores. Help keep usable items out of our local landfill, plus it's tax deductible. You can donate everything from appliances to furniture, building materials, to lighting, paint, housewares, and more. And you can request a donation pickup online or drop off your donation at any of the Restore locations in Beaverton, Gresham, or Portland. Visit pdxrestore.org to learn more. That's pdxrestore.org. Plan a winter wellness getaway before the chaos of hosting and holiday travel begins. Salishan Coastal Lodge offers endless ways to nurture your mind, body, and spirit. Start your mornings with complimentary yoga, unwind at the spa, or cap off your day with food and drinks by the fire. And as a CityCast listener, you can treat yourself to 20% savings on your stay using the code CityCast. Plan your restorative stay at Salishan Coastal Lodge. Book now at salishan.com using code CityCast for 20% savings and start your journey to feeling refreshed and renewed. Did you know Portland is the largest U.S. city with no fluoride in its drinking water? Since 1965, Portland voters have consistently rejected fluoridated drinking water. And we aren't alone. Just last month, Hillsborough voters rejected a proposal to introduce it, and voters in Lebanon, Oregon chose to stop adding it to their water after 2 decades. All of this comes at a time when fluoride is in the national spotlight, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. leading a high-profile campaign against it. But is it really so bad? And why are we so adamant about not having fluoridated public drinking water? So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with Washington Post public health reporter Fenit Nirapil. He's been following the latest fluoride developments in Oregon and is here to talk about how they fit into the national story. It's Monday, December 9th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Okay, real quick before we get into the show, I just wanted to chat with you for a minute or two because today we're kicking off our end-of-year membership campaign. So in the next week, you're going to hear us all talk about why we hope you'll become a CityCast Portland member. And if you're asking yourselves, didn't you guys just have a membership campaign? You would be correct. But before the year comes to a close, we need to ask for your support just one more time because your member support is essential to the future of CityCast Portland. So we hope you'll join us today at membership.citycast.fm. I think we all know national news has a way of making the problems we face seem impossibly big and far beyond our control. But the truth is, real change starts closer to home. That's why every day CityCast Portland brings you the stories and conversations that matter most right here in Portland. And like the conversation you're about to hear next, concerning Oregon's pushback against fluoridated drinking water, we're helping connect our local concerns to the larger national headlines without the fear-mongering or the clickbait. Because we believe local news isn't just about keeping you informed. It's about helping you understand our city, creating community, and reminding you that yes, the bigger change happens right here where you live. That's why I'm asking for your support. Become a CityCast Portland member and help us keep doing this work, digging into local stories that have an impact and bringing you perspectives that make a difference in your daily life. And here's something extra. Anyone who signs up this week will receive an exclusive CityCast Portland tote bag. It's the perfect way to show your support while sporting a sweet, sweet, sweet looking tote bag all around town. For as little as $8 a month or $80 a year, you can invest in local journalism that connects and empowers. Join us at membership.citycast.fm. All right, thank you so much for listening and for being a part of CityCast Portland. On to our show. Fenit, you've actually lived in Portland for a little bit, right?
I was at the Oregonian in 2013, so that was the year when fluoride was on the ballot in Portland. So I vividly remember how intense that year was and how bitter that fight over fluoride was.
So you know that like Portland was bucking this whole fluoride trend. Before it was cool, we were just like the real fluoride hipsters.
Absolutely. And I actually was based in Hillsborough too, so it was a homecoming for me to come back to Hillsborough to write about their fluoride fight.
Yeah. Well, why do you think this state has been such a holdout on putting fluoride in our water?
That's a good question. Like, I don't know if I have the perfect answer for that, but what I just consistently heard reporting this story, and just from my own recollections being in Oregon back when Portland had this fight, is that Oregon is just a bit unique compared to other states in that you have like a mix of libertarian, liberal, and conservative hostilities towards fluoride. Because on the liberal side, you have that sense of like distrust towards the government putting things in the water for environmental and health reasons. On the libertarian side, you have that, like, I want to be left alone. I don't want the government doing something to the water supply without my permission. And it's similar reasons on the conservative side, too.
Mm-hmm.
According to the CDC, 26.4% of Oregonians who are on community drinking water supplies receive fluoridated water. And this is the third lowest rate of any state. So New Jersey and Hawaii are the lowest, but Oregon is the third lowest and one of the lowest.
Yeah.
And I also just think, too, that compared to other major cities, Portland has just like never had fluoride. So there just wasn't the same kind of norm with fluoride in the water supplies in Oregon compared to other major states. So it's just, there's been more of a history of controversy in Oregon compared to elsewhere.
Right. Will you remind us all just what the scientific consensus, has been about fluoride in drinking water?
Yeah, so for decades, the public health establishment and major organizations, including the American Dental Association and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, have really praised fluoride in the drinking water supplied as a huge boon for public health and for oral health in particular. So the idea is that you put fluoride in the drinking water as a way of preserving and improving people's oral health, because when we're eating and acid is forming, our teeth start to degrade and we start to lose minerals. So fluoride is a naturally occurring mineral. And the idea is when it's in your water, it can start to replenish some of the lost minerals in your teeth, and it can strengthen your enamel. And that in turn can prevent cavities and tooth decay. And there has been research in the past showing that the addition of fluoride in water supplies has reduced the rate of cavities and tooth decay. And there's also been evidence that in communities that have removed fluoride, you've seen tooth problems go up.
Yeah, I remember that fight in 2013 because I had friends who were working in a lot of nonprofits. And I feel like the nonprofit world, especially centering BIPOC communities, were so pro-fluoride because they were just like, hey, this is a disadvantage for a lot of communities, And dentists were also for it. Like, what were Portland dentists saying about our area compared to the rest of the country?
So what I consistently hear from dentists in Oregon is that you can really tell who grew up in Portland or other communities without fluoride and who came from other states because the people who grew up without fluoridated water just tend to have worse teeth. So they say that it's usually a telltale giveaway when someone is coming in with a lot of cavities that, oh, they probably grew up here. And when someone has much better teeth, they probably were a transplant like me.
Yeah.
But I will also say this is anecdotal because even the pro-fluoride dentists will acknowledge there's not great data on the comparison of like overall rates of cavities and tooth decay in Oregon versus other communities, or in Portland versus other major cities. Like I talked about earlier, there is other data and other research from other communities that suggest that fluoride does have a value with oral health. But a lot of what I hear from dentists in Oregon is more anecdotal, but it is just like really striking how much I hear this over and over again, including from like residents just when they go see the dentist.
Mm-hmm. One of the other points that was coming up during that fluoride fight in our area was that people were concerned that it would have a negative effect on the salmon population. Like they were concerned about runoff. They were concerned about, anything of that nature. They're just like, no, our ecosystem is so delicate. If we put too much fluoride, we don't know what's going to happen. Have you come across anything that would either support or refute this concern?
Honestly, I haven't dug as deep into the salmon concerns about fluoride because I'm a public health reporter. I tend to focus more on like the health effects piece of it. I mean, I just did hear generally that this is an issue that came up, but I haven't done enough reporting on it that I feel comfortable really adjudicating those concerns about the environmental impacts of fluoride. But I mean, we'll say major associations and public health groups and the CDC have still backed up fluoridation. And usually in the litigation around fluoride, we don't see like the impact of animals come up as a major factor. So this isn't really something I've heard come up much beyond the salmon issue in Oregon. But also, we're talking about water that's treated for human consumption, it's not like people are putting fluoride in the rivers and original sources of water. This is a chemical that's added during the treatment process.
Oh, 100%. I think they're worried about runoff and like sewers and stuff like that,
Yeah, I hear that point.
Yeah. You mentioned briefly that you came back. It must feel a little like Groundhog's Day. The last time you were talking about fluoride, and now Washington Post sent you back and you're still talking about fluoride. You recently were in the city of Lebanon near, am I saying that right? Lebanon, yeah.
They quickly corrected me. The mayor and the others quickly corrected me when we arrived to actually get a tour of their water treatment plant, where they're like, you got to make sure that you're saying Lebanon and not Lebanon, because I kept saying Lebanon instead of Lebanon.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, why Lebanon voted to stop putting fluoride in their water. The holidays are a time of coming together and sharing food. But unfortunately, some aging neighbors in our community are missing out on both. Just this year alone, Meals on Wheels people experienced an 8% increase in meals served to seniors, reflecting the growing challenges our aging population faces. And while 1 in 3 senior nutrition programs across the nation struggle with waitlists, Meals on Wheels people is proud to be one of the few that has never had a waiting list for senior meals. But the stats are telling. Nearly 60% of older adults they serve live alone. And as you can imagine, being alone this time of year can be especially hard. Which is why beyond providing nutritious meals, Meals on Wheels people also offer a critical point of social connection for homebound seniors who may be feeling isolated. You can support their incredible community of volunteers and staff, ensuring any senior who needs a meal receives one. Visit MOWP.org today to double your donation on this Giving Tuesday. That's MOWP.org. Every gift matters, every meal matters. Profile Theater, one of Portland's oldest professional theater companies, is thrilled to be back with their 2024-2025 season featuring award-winning playwright Lauren Yee. This season, you're able to connect deeply with Lauren's groundbreaking work over a series of productions. This includes Samsara, one of Lauren's earliest plays, a satirical confrontation with modern-day colonialism and what to expect when you're expecting someone else's child. The season closes out with the Playwright Festival, where audiences meet and hear new work from the next season's top-secret featured playwrights. Memberships to the 2024-2025 season are available now. Head to profiletheater.org/memberships to become a member today, or head to profiletheater.org, that's profile, THEATRE.org, to learn more about the incredible Lauren Yee season.
Hi, David Plotz here. I'm the CEO of CityCast, and I want to talk to you about becoming a member of your local CityCast. By now, you've probably heard the team behind your local podcast talk about why you should become a member. But I want to tell you why I hope you'll consider becoming a member. We started CityCast because we believe cities are amazing and that they're at their best when they're full of passionate people who know what's going on and are actually engaged in them. But it's pretty hard to know what's going on in your city and how to be part of it and how to change it. That's why we bring you daily local podcasts and newsletters made by locals for locals that are informative and joyful and funny and completely unique to your city. But it takes a ton of effort and your support to keep us going. If this show has helped make you a better resident of your city, first of all, that is great. And second of all, please help make sure we can keep on making it. Become a member of your local CityCast at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. And thank you. Everyone on our team will see and appreciate your support.
Okay, so that city, Lebanon, near Corvallis, they actually voted to stop using fluoride in their water because, again, there are some cities in Oregon who do have fluoride in their water supply. Is it unusual for a city to end the practice?
It's not. In fact, we've seen a lot of communities start to remove fluoride from their water supply in recent years. So the Fluoride Action Network is the biggest national group that really opposes fluoride, and they keep a tracker of communities that have removed it. And so by their account, dozens of communities have taken this step. But generally, it tends to be smaller ones. But we have seen larger cities, including State College at Pennsylvania, that have removed fluoride from the water as well.
What were their reasons?
Honestly,
Mind control?
Honestly, I'm not sure with the Wichita State College in particular, but usually it comes down to health concerns. Mm-hmm. And I mean, yes, there are the anti-fluoride opponents who are citing things like mind control and the more conspiratorial arguments. But I do think people have to be more circumspect when describing the opposition to fluoride as being all conspiracy theories, because we have also seen mainstream research and mainstream institutions raise concerns about fluoride and whether it's worth the trade-offs. And I think this is an issue that requires a lot more nuance and really understanding the arguments for and against fluoride, because this is the way that I look at it. One of the central tensions in public health is taking measures that are supposed to benefit the entire community, but that makes some people in the community uncomfortable because not everyone has the same kind of risk tolerance. So this obviously came up with a vaccination and COVID vaccine mandates. I mean, you've consistently heard from public health officials that the benefits far outweigh the risks, but individuals can have different views on what kind of risk they're willing to tolerate.
Well, what's the risk for fluoride for, human consumption?
So in recent years, we've seen research come out that suggests that there can be downsides. I'm going to focus on children and IQ because that's the one that's had the most backing from mainstream institutions. So the Federal National Toxicology Program, which is part of the federal government under the Department of Health and Human Services, they did an extensive review of research. And in August, they released a report that concluded with moderate confidence that higher levels of fluoride are associated with lower IQ in children. But there are also two major caveats here, which is a lot of the studies they were looking at had higher levels of fluoride than what's considered the safe threshold in the United States. And there's just questions of how effectively can you really measure the IQ of children, particularly toddlers. But at the same time, a federal judge who was hearing litigation about fluoride and whether there needs to be more regulation of fluoride concluded that that review of literature suggested that there still is a risk of lower IQ and neurological effects in children from fluoride, even with the levels that are in the United States. So the underlying research itself didn't conclude that there was these negative health effects with the levels of fluoride in the United States, but it raised enough questions that federal judge said that the Environmental Protection Agency needs to do more regulation of fluoride to prevent these kind of negative health effects. So yeah, like I was talking about with COVID vaccines and the tension between the collective and the individual, that's what we're seeing play out in fluoride, because some parents are not willing to deal with any uncertainty or any concerns about negative consequences of fluoride. And then the argument is that, okay, but unlike some other public health interventions, there are alternatives to receiving the health benefits of fluoride without having it in your drinking water. Because when fluoride was first added to drinking water, you didn't see widespread fluoride in toothpaste and mouthwash. But now you do find fluoride that's readily available in toothpaste and mouthwash. People can receive fluoride tablets. They can get fluoride applied on their teeth when they go to the dentist. One of the other big developments in the science of fluoride that has been considered a boon for the anti-fluoride movement is that the Cochrane Library, which is an organization that does these extensive literature reviews on medical issues and is often considered one of the gold standards for evaluating scientific research, they recently came out with an extensive report, and they concluded that the oral health benefits of fluoride are now slight, that you see a slight reduction in tooth decay and cavities, and that the benefits have really shrunk since 1975 when you saw widespread addition of fluoride in toothpaste. So in addition to the concerns raised about the side effects and the downsides of fluoride, you've also seen new concerns about the benefits of fluoride as well.
That's so interesting because I feel like all of the literature that was getting pushed, especially from like nonprofits, BIPOC communities, they had such strong numbers of like, no, it clearly shows that people who don't have access to fluoride have worse teeth, have worse oral health. So that's just interesting.
If I can just add there, one of the statistics you've often seen cited by nonprofits, like the ones that you've mentioned, is that fluoride has been linked to a 25% reduction in tooth decay. That comes from a 2015 Cochrane review. So now you have the Cochrane Library with a more recent analysis that suggests the reduction in tooth decay is not that great.
So going back to Lebanon, why did they take it out? Like, what were the residents saying about it?
Yeah, so the backlash to fluoride in Lebanon really came from a group of citizens who started to oppose fluoride. And we did see some conspiratorial elements in Lebanon that was pushing back against fluoride. So a lot of the argument that was coming was that this is a dangerous chemical, that when you look at the manufacturer safety reports, they talk about how it's hazardous. And a group of citizens even toured the water treatment plant, and they were alarmed when they saw that there was a lot of precautions and protective equipment that a water treatment plant had to, plant staff had to wear. Because
I'm sorry. I used to work at the water lab and
oh really?
Yeah, in Portland, and like there's just so many chemicals that go into our drinking water because we can't just drink water straight from like a mountain. There's organisms, there's a little bleach, there's so much. There's even like things to make it taste good, and it's perfectly fine. That's the thing, but like, you don't want like to get dunked in it. Any chemical,
Yeah. So people in Lebanon were spooked when they saw that, the acidic form of fluoride that's added to the water, it has all these warning signs. People have to wear masks and protective gloves and other equipment when they go in to deal with the treating. But chemicals alone can sound scary, but it's about dosage. And the key is that the acidic form of fluoride is highly diluted before it ends up in your drinking water. And when you also go to the water treatment plant, you'll even see all the sensors that are there to make sure that it is at safe levels before it gets into the water supply. Because all sorts of other chemicals that humans are exposed to can be dangerous in their original forms, like chlorine, for instance. One of the things that struck me when I was reporting on Lebanon is that a lot of, because this is 2024, a lot of local community debates are happening online. And one of the proponents of fluoride posted something that was essentially countering the flyers that were being distributed about the dangers of fluorosilicic acid. So he posted something about the dangers of dihydrogen monoxide, which can cause bloating and even death in excessive amounts. But dihydrogen monoxide is H2O.
Yeah.
Water.
I remember hearing that. Like, it's an acid. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to blow your mind about acid and bases. So why did this start becoming like a bigger national issue, do you think? Like, why is the whole country seemingly like now fixated on fluoride? And I don't mean like the entire country. I mean these groups, and what appear to be more rural communities. Like, what's going on?
Fluoride for a long time has been a very hyper-local issue. You don't normally see the tensions about fluoride really playing out in the national stage or like congressional fights over this. So a lot of these fights have been happening in the community level, like what was going on in Lebanon, what was happening in Portland back in 2013. But now it's coming on the national stage because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. became an ally of Trump during the campaign. Now he's the choice to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. And in the waning weeks of the presidential campaign, RFK said that fluoride was going to be a day one priority for the Trump administration, and that on day one, they would instruct water agencies to remove fluoride. I should also say that this is more of a request as opposed to like a mandate. The federal government can't just up and say, there can be no more fluoride in drinking water. But for the first time, you're seeing signs that the federal government might turn on a long-standing public health intervention that is embraced for decades. The CDC has even said that fluoridation of drinking water is one of the top 10 most impactful public health strategies of the 20th century. So this is a big deal if you have the federal government and federal health agencies come out against fluoride for the first time in history, and for the first time since it first started getting added to water supplies more than 50 years ago. And so that would be a big change in terms of the bully pulpit and the public case for fluoride. And so Trump hasn't weighed in on it extensively, but he was asked about this in an NBC interview. And what he said was that he hasn't made up his mind about it, but he didn't rule it out.
I'm laughing because I'm just like, I mean, the fact that even in Oregon, the state can't mandate that every city has fluoride, just that logic following up to federal level, you know, like you can't, that's going to be a shit show.
There are some states that have state level policies that are pushing for fluoride, but at the national level, that gets more complicated. I mean, we hear opponents of fluoride saying that they expect fluoride to be removed from the water eventually because of what's happening in that federal litigation that I talked about earlier, that you might see the EPA no longer defend the thresholds for fluoride. And so you might see more communities turn against it. But I have also been wondering whether the politicization of fluoride on the national level means that some Democratic areas might end up embracing fluoride more, might be more resistant to removing fluoride than they were in the past. Because Portland is obviously one of the bluest cities in the United States, and Portland has been resistant to fluoride. So historically, this hasn't been a red-blue conservative liberal issue. There have been concerns about fluoride crossing the different political ideologies. But I do wonder if now that this is turning into a Trumpian issue, an RFK issue, if you're actually going to start to see more defense of fluoride.
I wonder, like, is that what it's going to take for Portland to like put fluoride in their water? Because here's the deal. When you get the Venn diagram of like extreme left and extreme right, this distrust of government, of questioning authority, there's just a lot that interlocks there, you know?
Yeah. I have a hard time believing that it's going to change the game in Portland, where for decades, Portland residents have been resistant to the addition of fluoride. But I do wonder if it would have changed the calculus in Hillsborough. For instance, if Hillsborough voted on fluoride 2 years from now, in the middle of a Trump presidency versus right now. So, I mean, it's speculation how the politics of fluoride are going to change. But this is actually a concern that I heard from some of the anti-fluoride opponents as well, because they consistently say that this shouldn't be a political issue. This is an issue about science. And so there is a worry here that you may see more of a politicization of fluoride, and that might actually be a barrier to their movement because it detracts from the focus on science and the concerns about fluoride that have been raised by these mainstream institutions.
Do you think that other states can take any lessons from what happened in Portland's fight?
I would just go beyond Portland and say Hillsborough and Lebanon as well, since they were the ones that just had ballot measure fights over fluoride this past election cycle. So there's a couple of things I think the rest of the country can learn from Oregon. One, probably first and foremost, this is a very intensely emotional issue. It's not just about debating the merits of science, but this issue inspires a lot of very intense passion, because ultimately this is about something that's in your drinking water. How does it affect children? So for proponents of fluoride, you're going to be up against some very strong feelings and some very strong opposition. And then we've also seen that some of these recent recent developments with fluoride have made it harder for proponents of fluoride to make their case. So the other lesson from Oregon is that this is not a red or blue issue. You actually saw Hillsborough, which is Democratic leaning, vote more resoundingly against fluoride than Lebanon did. I mean, the Lebanon ballot measure actually passed fairly narrowly. And I talked to conservatives in Lebanon who made the argument that, like, well, this has been in the water and I haven't been harmed. I haven't seen anything wrong with it. My favorite conversation that I had in Lebanon at a diner was this guy telling me that, well, like, I haven't seen anything bad with fluoride. The real danger to our health is left-wing politics.
Okay. And were you just like, cool, and walked away?
Basically.
Well, Fennett, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Just a reminder that you can pick up a sweet, sweet CityCast Portland tote bag by becoming a member at membership.citycast.fm. If you're already a member, thank you. We could not do this work without you. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend, rate or leave us a review. It really does help us out. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.